Hi, how you doing? It's me. Minecraft 1.21's Big Kahuna is the trial chamber structure. The whole new update is practically all about this thing, so it would probably make sense and be helpful to know all about this thing. Now that the trial chamber structure looks just about finished, today we'll be taking a deep dive into the inner workings of the structure to help you out when you jump into the structure in survival. Oh, and hey, I actually almost forgot. Another thing we're going to take a look at today is the potential, very real possibility of more chambers coming soon too. Here is every single piece of the trial chamber structure. All 170-ish pieces. Whether we're talking about the trail ruins from the update before, the ancient city, or any other advanced Minecraft structure, most of the structures are split up into different categories. This first category of components of this structure that we're going to take a look at are going to be the trial chambers themselves. These are going to be the rooms where most of the battles take place. Now, the trial chamber structure has undergone quite a few changes during its development. This chamber right here, without any of the components inside of it, is called assembly. Assembly, moving into it, it's big and it's open. We've got an upper spot, we've got trap doors on the floor right here, usually a spawner front and center right there, and then a ton of different components all along the side. The chest that sits at this door to assembly will always be an empty chest for dropping your supplies off. Now, oh boy, speaking of components of this structure, we have so many different components. All of these little different copper grate pieces and other pieces in general are all going to be things that'll spawn inside of the room, most of them being on the floor to make your experience a little bit different. Now, this is how the trial chambers ends up getting crazy unique, because for just assembly alone, for just this one chamber, we have 21 different pieces, and these different pieces can show up like pretty much anywhere inside of the chamber. Like, for example, sometimes you'll have a staircase inside of the room completely shifting the vibe. Other times, it'll just end up staying a little bit more wide open. Now, for the most part today, when taking a look at these components, either they're really small and you can get them all from just taking a look at them, or they're a little bit more complex, but there's still not too much to them in the grand scheme of things. For example, like secret rooms, at least right now, inside of a lot of these components, there's not like secret chambers or anything like that. So here we've got a right side of a staircase, and then over here we've got a right side of a staircase that's a little bit different. Next up, moving on to the chamber called Eruption. And now Eruption is a really cool one. Eruption is going to be the one that always, every single time, has a pedestal in the middle with a water bucket inside of it. However, before all that magic starts popping into the chamber, we have a big empty room with, in survival, no bats. Our structure components that can make up Eruption can be arranged in any random order other than this centerpiece right here. The centerpiece is always going to sit in the middle, and voila, look at what I was talking about. The water bucket. But again, before anything actually fills out these corners, they're a little bit empty looking, and again, they can rotate and be in any corner of that structure right there. So you could end up having, theoretically, 4 of these pieces that'll make a really crazy looking chamber. There are also a little bit more than 4 corners, which means you're not always going to see every single corner component inside of the structure. You also have these very familiar middle pieces, which sometimes will hide like a vault or a chest or whatever inside of them. This is another piece, the final one. You couldn't really see it. It's called Slice 3, and I mean, sure enough, checks out. It looks like a slice. Next up, moving on, the structure as a whole is massive. This chamber is also pretty large. It's called a pedestal. Moving over to the inside of this structure, yet again on the inside, we will find bats. And did you know, inside of your world, that not only hostile mobs will never spawn inside of this thing, at least random other ones, but also things like bats will never spawn too. Anyways, pedestal is like a big room. You have this like upper walkway, and then down low you have like the lower walkway. In the middle right now we have just a bunch of pillars, but these things can get filled out with more parts of the chamber in the middle. This chamber is one of the newer ones, and also one of the more advanced ones as well. Like, just taking a look at the design, kind of a lot is going on here. Now, by the way, these chambers are in parity on Minecraft Java and Bedrock, so I'm taking a look at these structures on Java Edition today. However, if you're Bedrock gang checking out the new update, well, the structure is going to look the same. The components are all pretty much identical from one version to the other version. Now, a lot of the interior pieces that will make up the pedestal chamber make great use of copper grates. Like, look at these things. This is going to make like a wall that seems like a wall, but it's not really a wall. You can break it down and have more on the other side. All the way back over to the start of my huge structure setup today, we have another trial chamber. This one is called Slanted. The slanted trial chamber actually looks a little bit familiar to the one that we were just checking out. We've got the pillars and everything still, except this time, more pillars going all the way up in the middle, and no, by default, a second story floor going all the way around the side. Instead, you're going to have a bunch of these different components, specifically slanted center and ones like it with walls in here that are going to turn this chamber into essentially a big giant maze. Sometimes, though, you might have components that do get a little bit more wide open. However, take a look at how these things are lined up right here. This is basically where the pillars are going to cut through. So this will kind of like smush or sandwich in between a couple of them. Same with this one right here, and then the walls right there, you can see how it starts to get cut off, and then more fake walls with the copper grates. Now, when diving into the structure files for some of this structure today, some of the stuff looks really samey, but there are very minor differences here. And those tiny, minuscule differences are the thing that really make the chamber come to life. Oh, by the way, this one's really cool. It's like a fake dead end properly, with like bricks all the way around one side, copper grates on the inside. So some of these next pieces of the slanted puzzle get a little bit larger. Look at how big this one is with a big proper staircase. This one over here, you have like a broken staircase. Usually I find like a parkour pedestal in there or something like that. Over here, pretty much a similar thing, except rotated this time. Then we've got a lower one with copper grates, and look at that, parkour pedestals right there. You gotta climb them to like make your way up to the second story. Good luck checking out and trying to pull some of this stuff off in the structure while the breeze is attacking you, because that jumping stuff, ooh yeah, that's impossible. You're gonna have to take it out. Now this one right here, we have a little grate situation going on, and it goes underneath the floor actually. It's kind of like a secret hallway. You could dig it out and crawl through it. Very cool, very sneaky. I love to see tiny little hidden stuff like this, and I wish it was more of a thing across the whole structure. Finishing things off with a little bit of a copper speed bump, and yeah, that's pedestal. So out of the trial chamber structures that make up this structure, we've got a lot of them, and the ones that we just checked out are the newer, more advanced ones. Some of the more OG classic ones don't have fancy names. Instead, we have like Chamber 1 sitting right here. Now, Chamber 1 is a big, wide open room, and there are different components the Chamber 1 is going to use to actually like fill this thing out. However, for these more generic chambers, if you want to call them that, chamber number 2 on the way, while the other chambers had unique components that will only show up inside of them. For example, the pedestal one, well, that is going to be the only place in the entire structure you'll ever find this piece of the puzzle. Anyways, chamber number 2 is the powder snow one. Powder snow all over the floor. That's going to freeze you while you're taking on the breeze. Ugh. Chamber number 4. We actually skipped to number 3. It doesn't exist. Usually when those numbers don't exist in the files, it's because they were changed at some point in the development into one of the more cool ones. Anyways, so this one right here, it's the one with like the low area where you could like crawl under here, and you're gonna have small mobs, like say a cave spider crawling underneath trying to get you. Then you get a staircase up top, kind of wrap around, a chest sitting inside of this room, and an upper area too. The safe's pretty wide open. Last but not least, for our individual chambers, the tall one, the dangerous one, with all of the ranged mobs inside of the room. Oh, I hate this one. This is the hardest chamber by far. Well, maybe, depending on the situation. But yeah, you load this thing up with a bunch of bugs. Oh, good luck. It's basically tall climbing every single time. You got the trap doors right there, so you kind of have to like, at least sometimes you have to like crouch to get under or whatever. And yeah, just good luck with this one. It's a mess. Now after that, we have one tiny piece right here that is called the entrance cap that will sometimes generate at the entrance to basically like cap it off if the structure ends. If the structure doesn't end, and we'll get into it in a minute, but it'll connect to like a hallway, a passageway or something. Now in this world, I do these lines all over the place. The solid line means that's a completely different piece of the entire structure. The dashed lines are smaller pieces of a structure that still relate to the initial one. So all of these things right here are different add-ons for the trial chambers that'll help like fill it out and make it more interesting. This one is a pretty familiar looking one if you've been following the development. You'll find it inside of that first chamber mainly, or at least like most recognizably, and it'll usually have a trial spawner sitting right there with a breeze inside of it. After that, we have different pieces that'll help fill out some of those large empty chambers with like upper floors, balconies almost if you will, and staircases that sneak behind. Usually it'll lead to other rooms or sometimes like a supply chest. Yeah, so this is an advance of the structure. Clearly, you can see we haven't gotten into any of the corridors quite yet. We're still looking at just components that make up the battle arenas. And again, keep in mind that these battle arenas, they could look different every single time because these components can pop into the structure in different spots inside of the same chamber. Anyways, though, with all of that said and done, we finished the trial chambers of battle arenas. So from the outside of these chambers, by the way, pretty familiar looking. This is going to be the side of the chamber that if you're lucky, you might see peeking out at you inside of the cave. That means if you're looking for a chamber while caving, it's going to usually be tough bricks that you're looking for. Sometimes you might get a little bit of copper exposure on the outside, but I'm telling you, 90% of the time, it's all tough. Next up, an easy piece of the puzzle today, let's take a look at the chest component of this structure. We have a simple connector for where chests will pop in, and then we have the chest to supply pedestal. This pedestal is always going to have chiseled tough brick and andesite actually. The loot, of course, is going to be randomized every time. Now, let's take a look at another big component of the structure, and that is corridors. The corridors are going to be the hallways that make up the structure that sometimes, depending on how the structure is set up, your battles might spill out into. However, inside of the corridors, you will never naturally find spawners sitting. Like, you're not going to walk into the atrium and find a spawner sitting right here. Now, the atrium is another piece of this structure that is relatively newer, being added way later than some of the other components we're looking at here. Big fountain in the middle every time, nice and grand, and these bulbs can oxidize at different levels. Right now, they're all bright, but they won't always be. Now, inside of the atrium, you're always going to have something on either side of this room. You have a window right here that I'm kind of looking in through, and then a window on the other side. That thing is going to be a different tribute to other mobs in the game. Hero Brian right here, or maybe if you're more realistic, I guess it's a bug. Whatever, stop ruining my party. Then we have a breeze right here. Oh, it's angry, the eyebrows. Then we have entrance staircases, and we've actually got a couple different ones. The entrance staircase right here is going to completely shift the vibe of the atrium. On one, you have this one that like overlooks the big room. The fountain would be down there. On the other one, you kind of like walk right in and then split off to the side. Here's another staircase. This is like kind of a combination of the two. You got the big overlook, but then you got the winding staircases. Is fancy. Another side picture one of my favorite ones, a cave spider pixel art. Look at that with the stained glass right there. And by the way, every time below the grates, it's just going to be lighting, but wow, that's cool looking. Finally, we got the spiral one, another pretty common one. I see it all the time. It's a tribute to the breeze, an homage. Same thing with the copper bulbs. Yeah, alright, so that's a pretty cool chamber. Interrupting that message for this other quick message. Tap like on a video right now for 10,000 years of good luck and, you know, to just do me a huge favor and really help me out. Thank you. Still with the corridors, these are now different pieces of the whole structure that are going to pop up in random spots. This piece is called End 1. Usually up here, you'll find an ominous vault, very fancy good rewards, and then cutting down the middle, this will link up to other things with pathways on either side. Behind what we'll call the ominous wall, I particularly love this entrance. It is fire. You have this copper like trim going all the way around the side, and then a big door. I want to build that at one of my structures. So that's one of the ways the corridors could end, and that'll usually lead into a chamber. This is another way the corridors could end. This time we've got a cool water design down low in here. It's so cool looking, and usually I find a chest hidden inside of here. Open a chest and oh boy, that's some good looking loot. I think it can change though. I don't think it's always that. You also in this one have a fake ending right here with copper grate. You dig it out and usually that'll go into a chamber or something. Other option is a chamber up top. Those were called end. This piece is called entrance. And wow, that familiar looking door, except now it's on the outside. The entrance pieces, with quotes around it, are, quote, the entrance of the structure. But it doesn't really matter where you enter from, and because the map doesn't lead to the entrance, you're probably not going to usually enter from the entrance or whatever. But you get some supply chests right there. Then you get the famous little trapdoor trick. You also get this little tree garden situation. Now, opening the trapdoor, closing the trapdoor, we're crawling. Then we're crawling out over here, and just like that, we would lead into like the hallways, the corridors. However, before we do that, over here, we have a little bit of a secret door situation. Inside of the room, we get random supply chests. But the entrances, and this was another one of those changes that was a little bit newer, they can be different nowadays. Entrance number 2, or so it's named inside of the structure. It starts a little bit familiar looking, except this time, no tree necessarily in the middle. Then we've got these chests right here with a little bit more supply. Very common theme in the entrance rooms. If you have chests, they're gonna probably be supplies. However, it seems that every single entrance that I find, it can also have a vault somewhere inside of it as well. Usually I'm finding the vault in this one up high on the balcony. But that's not all. There is one more entrance that you could have. This one is tall. It's kind of like windy. You have the supply chest down low that are going to link up with the rest of the structure. Then we have this winding staircase, winding, twisting, curving, and swerving until you get to the top of the structure. This time the entrance door, if you want to call it that, it's this thing right here. It's on the ceiling instead of being like down below or on the side. Now this one is a little interesting because following the staircase winding up, if I went to like follow the staircase, whatever, you know, I'd go up. However, there is sometimes a little bit more to the structure. However, the way to get to the rest of the structure is going to be like scaffolding or whatever, because we have the second staircase that doesn't link up to anything. From down low, it goes to that dead end. From up high, it goes to this dead end. A big tip that I've got for you when exploring the trial chambers, keep this in mind that copper grates are usually a little bit of a hint. If you see copper grates, that might mean something different, separate, and a little bit secret is on the other side of those grates. That could be a completely separate room, or it could just be like a different part of the big room. Next up, we've got a couple boring pieces of the corridors. They are plates that are going to sit underneath the corridor in case it needs it to level it out. And then we've got the hallway sections. Now, these hallways will link to each other sometimes to make the hallways completely unique and different. The first one is big and open, and by the way, you could have a couple of the same pieces linked to itself too. So we've got big, open, and boring. It's just like a nice hallway. It's open, not much to say about it. Then we move on, and we got big, open, and a little bit less boring. In fact, adoring. I'll be here all night. Yeah, so this one has a door down low, and then up high, it doesn't have any doors, and then up higher, it doesn't have any doors. Next up, we get one with, again, that copper grate thing that I was telling you about. The copper grates are going to cut right through right here. It's like a secret passageway or a window. We also have a second story door this time, and down low, a little bit of ledges going on. Moving on, we've got a door on the 3rd floor now. Stuff is getting insane. And then over here, we just have open, not too much going on, a little boring. Next up, we basically flip it around. The doors were always on this side. Now the doors are going to be over on this side. We've got it down low. Moving forward a little bit, we've got it up high. And with the door on the 2nd floor right here, we have different staircases right there, kind of cool looking. A separate walled-off area right there, which is nice. And then no top platform right there. And then again, moving forward, we have even more copper grates being sneaky, except this time, very sneakily, we move into a proper secret room with like a chest or a vault or whatever inside of it. It's so cool. I love it. Then for the rest of this thing, we have kind of openness and a door up top. And last but not least, for our hallway pieces, we have another big, large, wide open, and a boring one. This one connects perfectly in the middle like that. Usually you find a spawner in the center. Now these things right here are different corridor add-ons. So this could pop up inside of those hallways or maybe inside of the different entrance rooms. This right here is an arrow trap. You got a tripwire right there in a dispenser. It'll shoot arrows at you that might have effects. Then we have like a little bump up to like cut through the hallways or whatever. Hanging bulb, hanging platform, different tree, mangrove tree, and then a cactus tree. Now, there's currently a little bit of a bug. I don't know if it's going to make it into the update, but sometimes you'll find the cactus tree with one log up top. And I think that's going to be like 2 tall cactus that they could just grew inside of this world. But anyways, you find a log on top of this thing with leaves around it. That's an error, an issue with the structure. It's not meant to happen. What's meant to be here is just a plain old cactus with a bush and some sand. Then we have another hangy bit right here. It's kind of like a hangy wall, or I always think of it like a big gong or something. I don't know. Then they have a ladder over here that can pop up on the side of those like big long hallways that we were taking a look at. That's how you get up and down. You've got a grated platform, a hanging grate platform, a hanging copper platform, a small windy staircase, a wall that might block off those hallways and make it more separate, and then another wall that might block off those hallways and make it more separate. From taking a look at these cleverly designed add-ons to the structure, you start to see how this thing could be crazy different. Let's take a look at some of the decor that can make up those sections too. You could have barrels with generic, kind of like more like supply loot inside of it. You could also have candles making up the structure, like, you know, along the hall. And every time these candles are going to be the white candles, but you can find them in every single size of a pile, all the way up to 4. You could also find pots with dead bushes or proper real pots with the unique shards on them. You can also find plain ones as well. Now, keep in mind of this structure when checking it out, every single time you see a pot, there is always something inside of it. So every time, break that pot. You never know what you get. Moving on, we've got dispensers. Now, these dispensers are going to pop up all over this structure, usually inside of the chambers. These dispensers will sometimes have things like arrows, maybe splash potions, maybe good stuff, whatever. There are also floor dispensers. These mainly pop up inside of that first chamber, the assembly one. This right here is another type of wall dispenser that you could have with a button on top of it and a bulb right behind it every time. For this other dispenser that seems to pop up on a wall, the buttons are going to be on either side of it. Next up, we have hallways. So those were big corridors. These are more smaller hallways. Again, transitional spaces like all hallways are, but just not as like big, grand, and wide open. A lot of these pieces are also how you're going to end up getting up and down throughout the structure. This one is called corner staircase, and predictably, by taking a look at the name, it's a staircase that would be in a corner. Sneaky. You see what they did there. Corner staircase down, starting from the top. It's a staircase that predictably is in a corner, and it goes down. This piece of the corridor, a connector piece, is just a little bit of a buffer. If you have pieces that don't perfectly line up, you might see something like that happen. Left corner? Take a guess. What do you think it is? Long staircase. Might you guess from the name? It's a staircase that is very long. It goes all the way up. or all the way down, depending on the direction. A long staircase straight down is very similar looking, but is a little bit different. Lower hallway connector. I feel like this piece has had to have been in the structure for a long time because I really recognize this one. Has been there like for a minute since I was first trying it out. You get this big windy staircase. Maybe you could like speed it up by jumping down in the middle or something, and then you got another hallway that'll pop up down low. Now these are small connector pieces. This one is a small rubble piece. Usually it's like an end cap of a hallway. I love how they did this one with the cobbled deep slate in there, like spilling in, like it's like they were expanding the structure. Also, these bulbs, I believe, are always going to be off inside of this piece too. So it's like quite literally not finished quite yet. You also have a chest in here with some more basic loot. Another version of the rubble piece right here is similar, but it's a little bit different. You got the rubble on the other side right there, the copper bulb again, and oh yeah, I just love that. That's so cool, and it adds like proper lore to the thing. This right here is a wall that can create basically like another one of those fake endings. The copper grates again being the big hint. Right here is a straight piece. It's simple, it's easy, it's just a straight hallway, a cut through. Now to basically finish this off, we got a couple more up and down vertically pieces, except this time the staircases are way smaller. Last but not least, upper hallway connector. It's very similar to one of the ones we took a look at from before with a spiral staircase going down, except this time, not as much as a height difference. The floors are a little bit closer. Alright, and so here we are, getting right near the end of the structure today. These final pieces that we're going to take a look at make up intersection pieces of the structure, and right now, there are only 3 different ones, with a couple components to spice them up. Intersection number 1 is a big room with water filled all around this thing. And by the way, the intersections are going to have some secret rooms inside of them. We go ahead and take this thing down. We have generic beds in here that could be filled in with some color. Right here, we have a grate leading to a secret room. Inside of the secret room, you're going to usually find like a vault or some treasure right there. And you got glass right there, kind of revealing the room from the outside if you're extra intuitive and notice the details. Up here on the top, we have staircases that would link up to different other parts of the structure. Maybe more hallways, corridors, whatever. In fact, this one right here is definitely a corridor. I love this one with the water right here that you could swim around inside of it. So cool. That is such like a creative idea to add into the structure. Next up, we've got intersection number 2. From this side, it seems relatively boring, just 3 floors. We go ahead and move into intersection number 2, though it curves and winds a little bit. And well, we get this top separate room. Copper door right there every time. Couple beds in there. A barrel always sitting right there. And very hidden this time. In fact, I was missing it for the longest time. But behind this bed, you will always have another secret room. Inside of the secret room, you get another extra bed. A crafting table, actually. And a pot. Oh, and a table. I'm not asleep on there. This is a sneaky one, though. You could totally miss this easily if you're just running through this thing really quick. And finally, intersection number 3 right here. We got a tall part right here, but this one, oh man, look at it. You could tell. This is the tallest structure or components of the structure by far. We move into this right here, and oh, it's like 4 stories. Starting at the basement, though, we have a grated wall right here, which will usually, I find, lead into a chamber or something like it. Then we've got a floor right here. This grate, unfortunately, is never going to lead anywhere. I think instead it's maybe like a different platform for you to jump down if you're coming in from the top. On this part, you'll get some beds and a barrel every single time. Is that the first spot in Minecraft a brown bed will spawn in world generation? You be the judge of that. And then finally, up top, you get a big open thing that'll connect to the corridors right there and just nice, tall, and grand. Moving on, we've got our treasure. They can show up all over the place inside of the structure. The ominous vault always have the red terracotta, always have an ominous vault, and red candles. The other normal vault, it'll always look a little bit something like this. Less decoration around it, but I mean, hey, a vault is a vault. That's reward. I like it. And of course, last but not least, we cannot forget the thing that actually makes the chamber dangerous itself. You have different categories of mobs that will pop up inside of this chamber. You've got your breeze spawner. That's its own category, breeze in every single structure. Then we've got melee mobs, which is going to be the husk, it's going to be the spider, and it's going to be the plain old classic zombie. Pay attention to the blocks around these spawners. These are the signifiers. For example, the bog right here, which in the files is still called poisoned skeleton, which is a little strange. But yeah, you get the pods all in the mushroom. You got a plain old classic skeleton, you got a stray. Then, and I didn't even realize this until I was laying it out, but we also have a category of slow ranged mobs. These mobs are going to spawn out of these spawners a little bit slower. They are identical in every other aspect, like once they pop into the world, to the other ranged mobs. And then finally, Satan itself, a baby zombie spawner for your small mobs. You've got a cave spider, terrible for small mobs. Silverfish, disgusting. And then slime, look, I give you guys credit, it's not that bad compared to those other 3 demonic demons. Then, and this is the least interesting part of the thing, last and definitely least, you have some simple connectors for the spawners. You will not see this in survival. The jigsaw and all those blocks never pop up. So, for every single piece of the structure right now, that's just about it. But did you know there could be more? Before we move on, though, and take a look at more, every single block that can make up this structure, I think I went through the structure and just about pulled out all of them. If you're into, like, tearing down the structure for blocks, you're going to get a lot of tough, a ton of copper, but then a little bit of some of these other various things as well. Now, this structure has undergone quite a few changes. Originally, when I laid out this structure, the chambers were way more simplistic. The structure itself was way smaller and a little bit more samey. This was an overhead view. Moving forward, though, the modern one, it way expanded for the update, you can tell here. Ignore the low part, these are the other structures I've done videos like this on, but yeah, you can see there are so many components of this structure. More specifically, numbers-wise, if you're curious about that, go ahead and pause on screen and read all of this stuff right there. I did the math for you, broke it down, added it up. That means the trial chamber structure is split up into 9 separate categories, totaling 170 pieces total. That is way bigger than any other structure in the entire game. 1.19 is Ancient City. I mean, that's a large structure, but even that doesn't have as many individual different pieces, making it more unique every single time. The Trail Ruins that we broke down in this video right here, it actually had more different individual pieces than the Ancient City, so it was even more unique. This one blows it out of the water. These structures get more and more and more advanced with every update. I can't wait for 1.22. If you're into learning a little bit more about, say, the Ancient City, breaking down that structure, or even the Trail Ruins, then check out the Ancient City video, I did it on its own, or the Everything series episode on the Trail Ruins, where we had time to take a look at every single piece. Wish I could have done that with this one. Heartless Moj, one of the designers, amazing designers of this structure, and a couple of those other ones too, actually. We have a couple little teasers here and some insight as to what happened with the structure. So let's start with some of the teasers that don't make sense with anything that we've seen. We have vertical, I don't know, maybe that one could make sense, but then we have diagonal, I don't know what the heck that means. Honeypot, no chance we have anything like a honeypot. Stair spikes, absolutely not. That makes me think like dripstone or something, and riddles in the dark, that makes me think of like a dark room, but I'm not sure. A little bit of an interesting insight as to why they ended up shrinking those long corridors in development. And then last but not least, where some of those other changes might have gone. For stability, we've had to lock down the structure. I have more fixes coming in the 0.1 release, so 1.21.1, or who knows, maybe 1.21.10. And once Honeypot and Stairs Spikes get added to the structure, keep your eyes out. I'll do an updated video that'll kind of like add on to this one. I also could totally see them coming back in and maybe adding a new chamber or something like that, because these other ones right here were all initially numbered ones. We still have 4 plain old number ones, and one of these, or 2 of them, are pretty similar, with the only difference being powder snow is the floor. Whew, every single piece of the trial chamber structure, Minecraft's biggest and most advanced structure. If you enjoyed today's video, tap like and subscribe, and check out the Everything series playlist. Technically, this wasn't an Everything series episode, but it's kind of like an honorary one, prepping you up for the update. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been me, Waddles. This has been months in the making, and it finally feels good to have it done. I'll see you all tomorrow. Goodbye.